What's up, everybody? So it's Monday, October 6th, 2025. Happy to be with you guys. Okay, so I scheduled this live session on Friday when the USD was 1,438 Naira. Fast forward 2 days later, Monday, I just checked it on sendwave.com. That is the app that I use to exchange USD into Naira. So as of today, Monday, October 6th, 2025, the dollar has actually gained a little bit. So now it's 1 USD to 1,455 Naira. So the Naira has weakened a little bit and the USD has strengthened a little bit. So you got to realize that this, as far as like currency exchange goes, is a very, very cyclical, circular model in terms of we are now in Q4 of 2025. The US dollar tends to be a little bit weaker at this time of year, especially in the fourth quarter. So you're looking at from October, actually, I would say probably like the second week of September, October, November, December, the United States dollar tends to be a little bit weaker just because of the inflow and the holidays are coming. People are getting ready to travel home for the holidays. So it just tends to be a little. So now you got to ask, what is actually causing this? There really isn't anything in particular that's causing this the USD to be weaker during the fourth quarter, other than it's just more USD, more activities as far as like travel, and there tends to be less demand for the USD in Q4 of every year. And I've been doing this now for 5 years, since 2020. So I've seen the ebbs and flows of just the currency exchange. When I started facing Nigeria 5 years ago, uh, I was exchanging USD for what, 430, let's say for between 430 something Naira to 450 Naira. And at that time, you're looking at 5 years ago, a bag of cement was what? 3,500 Naira at that time. Fast forward to 2025, as of yesterday, a bag of cement, I actually confirmed it with a cousin of mine that's currently building in Akwa Ibom State. A bag of cement there now is about 10,000 Naira. So it's a very, very cyclical sector as far as like just currency exchange. And as exporters, at first, I used to sort of like edge and I would make my decisions based on the strength of the dollar. But over the years, because I've been doing this for so long, my thought process has actually shifted. Obviously, I want to do more business when the dollar is stronger than the Naira. That is just literally anywhere you go. But it's not something that you want to hedge upon and make decisions upon just based on the strength of the dollar. So now you got to look at like strategy. Strategy is actually a lot more important than just focusing on making your moves or not making your moves when the dollar is stronger or when the dollar is weaker. So what I always tell people is the best time to do anything in Nigeria is I'm talking about people in the United States looking at either investing or you are sourcing and purchasing goods for export in Nigeria into the US. You want to do your business between January and I would say between January and the second week of September of every month. Currently, though, we are currently manufacturing, as I'm speaking to you, in Nigeria, but more on a smaller scale. But as far as like logistics goes, as far as like our exports out of Nigeria into the United States, we are done for 2025. We're not bringing in anything else from Nigeria into the US for the remainder of the year, because right now we are focusing on all of our activities, like everything that we've done from January up until now. Now we're focusing on the Q4 holiday sales. So we're not going to start exporting or importing in from Nigeria until January of 2026. And by then, I'm telling you, just based on what I've seen, just the patterns that I've seen over the past 5 years, the USD is just going to be stronger at the beginning of every year. So should you as an importer in the United States looking at, should you wait for the dollar to be stronger, or should you just go ahead and execute whatever ideas and whatever projects that you have right now? Again, it depends on where you are. My recommendation is don't stop, because Nigeria is still relatively a dollarized economy. The United States, the US dollar, is the global currency that the world uses for import and export. So it's not going to change. If you're waiting for it to be stronger or weaker, you are basically looking at like a dynamic system to where you can't really determine or predict. You can only determine or predict based on just past experiences and past just the past circularity of US dollar, Nigerian naira over the past several years, if you do this long enough, or as long as that I've been doing it. But the obvious goal is continue to invest if you have to, continue to export. I know somebody right now that's still building. He actually started this project not too long ago. And I brought this up to him like, hey, Naira is gaining and the United States is weakening. What do you think? He said, it doesn't really bother him. He's just going to go ahead and just continue to invest. And that is what I would definitely advise you guys to do. So definitely don't stop. So I'm going to cover like the ways that the weaker, 5 ways that the strong Naira and the weak dollar affect exports. So obviously, the number one is always going to reduce export competitiveness. A strong Naira obviously makes Nigerian goods a little bit more expensive in dollar terms. So, the United States, we pay in dollars. In my case, I'm fortunate enough to be able to have a Nigerian Naira account in the US, but 100% of my transactions are done in USD, in the sense that I still have to exchange my dollars into the local currency, Naira. That is how I pay my workers. That is how I pay my team. That's how I pay my suppliers. I never pay anybody in dollars, and neither should you. Now, another thing too, in our case, we have a duality to what we do, in the sense that we are also the primary exporter of our own product from Nigeria. So we have the American Ventures USA business that does the importing. That's the importer of record. And then we have the American Ventures Limited Nigeria that does our exports. So if, at least the way that we do things is, yes, we work with multiple suppliers, we work with multiple farmers and multiple vendors, but the exporter of record in Nigeria to us is us. So we essentially import our own goods directly from Nigeria, and we also export to ourselves directly in Nigeria. So how does that affect what we do? Does it discourage me from exporting Nigerian goods to myself? It doesn't really discourage me at all, but it does tend to slow things down a little bit. It really does. I mean, I may not order as much as I would generally order. If the USD was much stronger. So I would honestly submit to you that the most that I have ever exchanged in the past 5 years that I've been doing this was it was $1 to like 1,750 Naira. And that was about a year ago. That's the most. This is when like Nigeria was dumping, when the current administration unified um, the exchange system. So where there weren't multiple exchange rates anymore, where you have to deal with like the banks, they have their own exchange rate, and then you are dealing with the black market with their own exchange rates. But right now everything is all unified. And I remember at that time, the only regret that I have was not exchanging more. Because honestly, I thought that the dollar was going to hit 2,000 Naira, but it plateaued for me at 1,750. And I waited, and then it dropped, and then it was 1,650, and then it dropped 1,600, 1,600, and now we are still at now we are at 1455, which is still pretty good. Believe it or not. I mean, you can still get a lot done in Nigeria. Your buying power, as far as like the U.S. currency is concerned, is still stronger. So, for just a generalist exporter in Nigeria, is definitely going to affect your exports for sure, uh, because people, particularly importers, U.S. importers, for us, what differentiates us is we are strictly focused on the US Nigeria markets. We are strictly focused on that market. Now, going on to the second part uh, of this is, obviously the first one is it does reduce export competitiveness. But then the second part is it will lower your export volume, because the stronger the USD is relative to Naira, the more people tend to buy. If Naira gains and the USD weakens, most US importers, like those that are a little bit more agnostic than us, like we focus strictly on the US Nigeria corridor. But let's just say you have a US importer that's also importing from, let's say, China or Ghana. They are always going to look at other markets uh, in order to be able to meet their import export needs. So when you are earning fewer Naira for every dollar that you receive, obviously your profit margin is going to shrink, um, especially after you factor in like production, you factor in logistics and compliance costs. So many exporters, they may reduce shipments, or some of them may even suspend orders altogether because they are waiting. And this is just for the uninitiated, the people who haven't done this long enough or don't have experience doing it. They may suspend their orders, waiting for the United States, for USD to actually strengthen before they come to you. So you're going to tend to lose a little bit of sales. But then again, keep in mind though that it's only generally in the Q4 part of the year, and I've seen this for the past 5 years. It's always mid-September to literally the end of the year. Naira tends to strengthen, USD tends to weaken. Okay, so they may suspend because it's suspend exports or suspend imports altogether. But you got to think about it too. 1,455, and I'm speaking directly to US importers here, is still a very good exchange rate for you to not take your foot off that accelerator. It really is. Because if you think about it, 3 days ago, it was 1,438. Now it's 1,455. So just that fluctuation is going to keep on going up, but I doubt that it's going to drop below. And I know there are some economists out there that predict that the USD is going to drop down to, let's say, 1,000 Naira. I just don't foresee that happening. And there are other models that I've looked at that actually shows it creeping back up to, let's say, 1,600, 1,650, even 1,700 by Q1 of 2026. For those who want to, maybe just hold out and wait. But generally, as far as like import export goes, you generally don't even want to be exporting anything out of Nigeria in Q4. You want to have everything at least done by the end of Q3. For those who are in the consumer product space, consumer goods space, where you are selling directly to consumers, like US consumers, like we are doing, you want to have all of your manufacturing done, and you want to have at least the last of your exports out of Nigeria no later than September of every year. So you can focus October, November, and December for US holiday sales. That's like usually, as far as like retail is concerned anyway, that is actually when most retailers actually make their money, is in Q4 of every year. So that's the third one. Actually, no. The third one is the slower foreign exchange inflows. Like I said, when you have a stronger Naira and a weaker dollar, most people tend to wait until the dollar strengthens again. Okay. So that can really hurt a lot of Nigerian exporters. Like in our case, it really doesn't matter for us because every dollar that we spend exporting from Nigeria comes back to us 10 times, 20-fold even. So for us, yes, we do have our limits. We are obviously mindful and we definitely follow the currency exchange, but it really doesn't matter. We've been doing this now. We started this when USD was 450, and we have never ever lost money because we buy very, very low. Obviously, we want the USD to be stronger, but we buy extremely low in Nigeria. We buy raw materials there. We manufacture our own goods right there in Nigeria, and our landed cost in the USA is actually much cheaper than if we were to, let's say, manufacture or export from China. And prior to us facing Nigeria, we did business with China for 17 years. I'm telling you right now, Nigeria is definitely the place to be for manufacturing, because the manufacturing cost, the labor cost, your landed cost is literally like 50% cheaper than if you were to like go to China and bring in products. So yeah, slower foreign exchange inflows, stronger dollar, people just tend to hold back. That really will hurt a lot of exporters in Nigeria and what they can do is also wait and just hope that the USD strengthens in the following years, and then they can start their exports again. So as far as like the fourth one here is increased focus on domestic sales. As far as like domestic sales go, and we've done this before, the only advantage to domestic sales is in volume. You're gonna get a lot of, especially for manufacturers, whether you're in the food processing space, particularly for those actually in food processing. Local sales is there. It's really more of a volume-based system, but your margins, because now you are dealing with local Naira currency, unless you are selling tons and tons and tons of processed foods, it's really going to be extremely difficult for you to make money locally there in Nigeria. That is why there is that focus on exports. Really, that's where I feel like the opportunity is as far as like making money, is you find a way to export your goods. If you have to hold out for a couple of months, hold out for USD to strengthen, because you're gonna get volume in terms of like exports. When people are buying from you directly from the United States, Canada, or even Europe, the volume, you're gonna see more volume there because the foreign currency is just a little bit stronger. But for those who don't have the patience to wait, they may, and then, because if you think about it, if foreign direct inflows of currency slows down, what are you going to do with all the products that you have on hand? You're going to have to find a way to sell it one way or the other. And you may choose to sell it locally there, which, yes, you're going to find buyers, you're going to find the volume is there, but now you're dealing with local currency. By the time you turn that currency into US dollars, it just really doesn't make any sense. So that's why exports is definitely more favorable for you. So the fifth one here is just the weaker export incentive programs. I know NAPC, the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, they do offer like an export expansion grant. It's called the EEG. It becomes less impactful for exporters if exchange gains are eroded by a strong Naira. So exporters tend to like lose a lot of motivation when it comes to participating in global trade when the local currency is stronger uh, than than foreign uh, than foreign currency. So hope this helps. Guys, strong Naira is not always bad for the economy, but you have to remember you are an exporter. You want to make money. You want to gain international clients. So it's going to depend on how you look at it. So what do you guys think? Do you think a weaker Naira is better, or do you think a stronger dollar is better as far as your export journey or your export businesses goes? But remember, the rule of thumb is always for exporters out there from January to, let's say, mid-September is when you really want to hone in and make sure that you are exporting out of Nigeria between that time, January to September. That's when the USD is strongest relative to Naira. Come October, mid-September, throughout the rest of the year, Naira is going to be a lot more stronger than the USD. And then it picks back up again January of the following year. It's very cyclical. I've seen this movie before. I know how it ends. So for us, we really don't get excited at all because we've seen this model before. We tend to do most of our business between January and September of every year, and then we slow down our exports and imports so we can focus all of our energy and all of our attention on everything that we've done for the first 3 quarters of the year. That's usually when we go out and we grind, we do our manufacturing, we do our sourcing, and then the fourth quarter is when we actually prepare and start selling our goods to US consumers. So hopefully that helps, guys. I'll catch you guys on the next one. All the best.